had tea this morning, not my normal coffee, sometimes referenced as a love that has never let me down. My tongue's most sophisticated places relishes in its gingery backsplash, all spiced and stimulating. Aromas. She paired well with the earth's bountiful harvest as a... Hey honeybees, how are you? Today is June 3rd, one of my favorite days of the year. It's my grandmother's birthday. It's her first heavenly birthday. She would have been 91 today. I just kind of wanted to do a little story time today. Cheers to my bubbly, because you know that's my thing. I'm into my bubbly. Okay? Yeah. Today I got the pineapple bubbly and not the mango. It's not quite cold and it's super hot out here, but it's really good. It almost tastes like a pineapple now later. But again, I just kind of wanted to get into story time. You know, I've had many people ask me, how did I even get into the thought process of purchasing land or being, you know, like getting the land and things to that nature. And I just kind of wanted to touch on it a little bit. Where should I begin this journey? This journey has been so long. Let's start it when I left Phoenix the first time. I left Phoenix the first time. I can't remember the year. I was taking my honey sweet treats in Another Honey Goddess production and a touch of honey on tour. Did a cross country, landed in Santa Fe, New Mexico, did fantastically well, but I did not know that it was a tourist town. And so as the summer dried up, the customers did as well. So I was kind of like stuck there, and with a woman that I won't say her name, but she was really unwell mentally. And I remember meeting another woman. Her name is Ricky. She, again, I was in New Mexico and she was in Florida, and she was living in her RV on, in like some, I don't know, park or RV park or something like that. And so I have at that point purchased, I had a minivan, and so she encouraged me to do van life, you know, van life. And so I was really trepidatious, and I was like, what? And I had just met a gentleman who literally had the same minivan, and he had like almost did a tiny home in his van. He was a musician. He had a master's in music, ethnomusicology, I do believe. And he had traveled and, you know, was playing gigs. So I mowed over it a little bit. I did it. Blase skippity doo dah. Converted it into a tiny home, and off I went to Colorado. I'll give you some more of those details in a whole nother part of the story time. But off I go to Colorado, right? So I was headed, sorry, is this a fly? I was headed to Kentucky, I think, at that time. Yeah, I was gonna go to Kentucky, right? And so the universe was like, halted me. And I got stranded in Kobe, Kansas. The person I was gonna go see was really flaky. It is what it is. I know who this person is. It's no big deal. Nonetheless, I get turned around. Finally, the things that I needed, you know, to come through came through in Kobe, Kansas. I then turned back around and go back to Colorado. I had booked an Airbnb to just camp out on their land in my minivan. And so I camped out, and I asked the owner of the home, did they know anyone that was, you know, hiring? And so she had told me about this, you know, like executive assistant position. I was like, no, that's not resonating. She's like, a bus monitor. I was like, stop. Not a school bus monitor, child. And so she's like, oh, down the road, there is a tree company that's hiring. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll check it out. She's like, well, they hire felons. And I was like, well, they need prayer too. You know, that's just, I don't know where that came from. Nonetheless, fast forward, I go down to the owner of the property and his wife's home. And One of the things I like most about this man is that he is genuine. And he is a genuinely hateful human. Like, he is, I used to tell him all the time, he was an equal opportunity, hateful person. And he, by unsight, hated me, and including my skin. Okay, let's be clear. But when you're doing God's work, none of that mattered. Really, it didn't. Because that man taught me in abundance. We had a great exchange, but he put me up on like either, I want to say it was either 5 or 10 acres of land. I got to work with him and learn how to live on land. I was completely clueless. I remember the first time I got that child, and he was like, "Come on, put your boots on." I put my boots on, child. I paid 300 designer boots, honey. I didn't know what I was doing. To go walk in cow patties, I had no idea that's what we were about to go do. But on some level, I wasn't bothered. But all I'm gonna say, fast forward, is after that experience and living on that white in those wide open spaces, I never wanted to live in an apartment again. It was just never, or a house. That just wasn't my desire anymore. It's something magical about open land, and it was in that moment, where when I was on his land, that I understood why farmers fought ferociously to keep their land. I understood it then. Us city folks, whereas we may and our, I think we do things, I think we definitely do things differently, and maybe city folks can be arrogant and believe that they're more advanced than people that live rurally. Maybe, before the technological gap and stuff, maybe then, but no. It takes a different type of tenacity and perseverance to live on in rural America, or rural land, period. So I learned that. I was a quick study, honey. I was a quick study, and I'm grateful. But once that happened, I was never interested in living, traditionally again. Fast forward, I knew it was time to go, because remember, I told you he was hateful. He was true to who he was. Okay. And so it was just time to go. But it wasn't bad terms when he and I left. When I left, it was actually good. And he said some really kind things to me before I left. But I returned to Phoenix for a business opportunity with a friend. And so here is where the real juicy story began. Now let's get into this teach out. Let me preface all of this with, I should have done my due diligence. I hold myself accountable for participating in business practices or business deals with people that were not up to par. And I should have done my due diligence, and I didn't. And so I hold myself accountable. I returned to Phoenix with a friend to help him expand his business. I told him before I got there, hey, I'm not in a position to come. I don't have a place, things like that. He was like, oh, no worries. You just stay here. Do you know what I'm saying? Cool. I got there. I was there maybe 2-3 days. I was in an apartment. He had a really nice place. And then he had this camper that he used to stay in all the time. And then a couple of days later, somebody slid something under the door, and it was like, he had put his 30-day notice in before he had ever extended me to stay there. So he had 22 days to leave. Okay. Obviously, when he went in, he didn't even look for a place. I think he went and did an extended stay. Okay. I wound up crashing with a friend, but I wasn't on her lease. Fast forward, I got kidnapped by the maintenance human. I didn't know that you could get kidnapped as an adult, and I did. That's a whole nother story time. But upon him kidnapping me, because he was the maintenance guy, and he was supposed to be taking me. He was really cool with my friends, so he was supposed to be taking me to look at another unit. That's not what he did. And so once he kidnapped me, he kidnapped me the entire day. It's 10 o'clock, and I literally went ham. Okay, I went apeshit bananas. He had just got out of the penitentiary for serving 20 fucking years for murder, and I was like, you're gonna have to kill me today, because I went crazy. I just went bananas. And so he returned me back to my friends, but when he returned me, the next day it was his sister. His sister owned the building. he called his sister, was like, oh, she's got people living with her. Like, and so I just left because I didn't want any problems. I didn't want any problems with her lease or anything to that nature. So then I rented a room. Girl, and listen, ladies and gentlemen, that was probably the most bizarre human I'd ever met in my entire life. And I done met some crazy people. I done met some bizarre people. I lived all over this country. I've lived all over this country. Okay? So I rent this room. Wound up doing, my events for my Honey Sweet Treats. She's like, just trying to get back on my feet. Just trying to get back on my feet. Because it was like, boom, boom, boom. I have a fork because I've been eating. But boom, boom, boom. I meet this human. Ooh, let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. When someone tells you that they don't care about people, listen to them. I didn't. I was just like, you've got to care. You've got to care. Like, who just doesn't give a shit about people? She didn't. I mean, she was the biggest thief I've ever seen. The thief of energy, the thief of ideas, the thief of money, the thief of just stealing and just screwing people over, and she just didn't care. And initially I didn't know that that's what she was doing with me. I mean, it was so much to the point, and she dragged my name through the mud in Phoenix, like business wise. We won't even get into the other nightmare, demon person that I did business with in Phoenix. What I came to learn is that there is a lot of unethical, unscrupulous, and people with no moral compass that conduct business in Phoenix. And so I lost everything. Fast forward, I lost everything. Now, again, and that was in December of 2018. Well, I technically lost it in January of 2019. I heeded the message of someone close to me, very close to me. It was like, hey, just return here, which here is home, Chicago. And I did. So much happened there in a very short amount of time. But all I'm going to say is when you find yourself sleeping on a park bench in your hometown, when your entire family lives there, that's a problem. That was the absolute lowest I've ever been in my life. I remember I met a gentleman named Kevin Jones. He was in wealth management. And I remember I said that to him. And he said, you're in perfect position. And I said, for what? Because I was on that merry-go-round of ready to check out and fighting for another day, like up and down all day. And he said, but you're in perfect position to catapult to the top. You know too much. And you're way too experienced and you're way too brilliant to not make it. He said, I look forward to seeing your name in lights. I called after some more bogus thing with people that are supposed to be close to you. But that was important. I call these necessary uglies. It was important that these things happen because I would have just taken them to the top with me. I wouldn't have thought anything of it. They're my people. But when you find yourself sleeping on a park bench when your entire family is in that town, and then one of them very flippantly say, well, supposed to be the eldest male of the family. Well, you have to be careful, or you have to give people a heads up and let them know how long you're going to be and, have your stuff in order. Shit happens in our lives every single day. I didn't even say anything. I said, okay. Child. I then called a friend who I've been friends with for 13 years. Said as soon as day 2 of me, now she knew everything that was going on because I told her. Day 2 of moving into her home, she asked me to watch her have sex with someone, and I was very upset about that because I wasn't interested. First of all, I wasn't interested. Second of all, I wasn't interested. Third of all, I was not interested. Fourth of all, I'm not remotely attracted to her. Fifth of all, I was having a nervous breakdown and trying to get my life back together because the bottom fell out of it like that. And then people that I trusted, that was supposed to care about me let me just literally, I was hungry. I didn't even have food. They left me out there. They left me out there. And so I had to weigh if I needed it to, watch this or not have a roof over your head. I will never forget the disgust in the pit of my spirit and the pit of my soul, like just disgust. Watching it, she fell asleep while the man was inside of her, passing gas. And so he removed himself, and I let him out, and I went downstairs into the basement. She comes running down the stairs. Now, mind you, I'm 45, okay? So 2019, how old was I? I don't know, 42, 43. I'm not interested in this. Come on, I'm grown. Oh my God. So, she runs down the stairs like a child, like a petulant child. Oh my God, what happened yesterday? And I was like, nothing. You fell asleep with him inside of you. I've never seen anything like it. And do you know, from that day forward, she stopped talking to me. She made this huge deal, big fuss. She's a Gemini, okay? I mean, and we're not even going to talk about the amount of people that ran through her and her house, okay? That's all we got within a very short amount of time. So when it was no wonder, and I never went back and forth with her. I let her just say whatever she wanted, because first of all, somebody that act like that hates themselves. Like they themselves, they don't love themselves. Somebody that loves themselves don't carry themselves the way she carries herself. It's just that simple. And even though I was going through something, I was not going to allow her to draw me into her nightmare, if that makes any sense. And because she was in a living hell. I remember she even taunted me. She was like, well, you must be a demon, because look at what's going on in your life. And she had known me for 13 years, knowing that there's nothing about me demonic. Sometimes people will project and say things about who they are and project it on you quite a bit. But I'm just giving you some back history and not even filling in the details for real. Like, I'm just giving you a little thing so you can string along. So fast forward, I had to leave her house over something that was so absurdly, like, dumb. It just, wow. Anywho, I remember that night I was sitting outside and I was crying and I was talking to God, and I'm like, I know you did not bring me from Chicago to Indianapolis to be outside. And then, I had another meltdown, similar to the one I had in Kobe, Kansas. That rage. I was so enraged. I was so angry. And as soon as I literally released it, I was like, you know what? I don't care. I just laid down on the bench. I just didn't even care anymore. My phone rang. And I will give this person's name, because I told her I will never forget her. And the moment that I am able to, give her something, materialistically that is worth something, I shall. Her name is Jacinia Gill. Miss Jacinia didn't know me from a can of paint. I took the last $200 I had. I took $20 to get in a taxi to go see the room that she had for rent. And I think the room was like $400. I gave her every dime I had. And she was like, okay, you can stay here. She was so kind and gentle and warm. I was battered and beat up and tired. Oh man, when I think about it, it brings tears to my eyes, because she was so kind to me. And I stayed there maybe about 6 weeks. I don't know. I found a coffee shop that I call Christian Mingle. Baby, that was not for me, honey. It was way too much going on underlying in that Christian Mingle coffee shop. But the gift that I found was radio. I found an online radio app where I could have my own radio station and shows. And I did it. And it is called Station Head. And I thrived. I did wonderful. I didn't even know that I made such a great hostess. And I found a DJ, and then I found my van. Okay? Because I remember saying to myself, I won't be homeless again, but I'm going to go on tour. So I bought this red van that is named Jazz for $800 in Indianapolis. And there were obviously some things, inners and outers, as my grandmother would say. Today's her birthday. Happy birthday, Granny. Ew. The happy with the van, but nonetheless, I took off for the tour. Went across the states, and it's $800, actually $780 to be exact, because I didn't have $800. Okay, I had taken an Uber to the dealership. Okay, and so I bought this van, converted it into a tiny home, van life, and went across the states and found super dope talent and interviewed them on my radio station, and took a break in January of 2020 because we had a lull. The first showcase was in October of 2019. So, is that right? Yeah, 2019. We had a lull in January, so I took a break. Well, okay. March, we're gearing up to go on to our second leg, the DMV area. I mean, it was whole East Coast. We had the DMV area, Philly, New York. We had Connecticut, and do we have Boston? I don't know if we have secured Boston yet. But we were working on our East Coast leg. Well, we all know that COVID hit. So when the pandemic hit, initially we were just like, oh, okay, just, being still, trying to figure out what's going on. And then, weeks went by, and I'm like, okay, I literally said out loud, God, now what? Like, what's next? And then I heard, buy land. This food is so good. So, sorry. Anywho, I heard buy land. I remember laying flat on the bed, and I'm like, okay, well, where? I had no idea. Rewind. Also, before I left Phoenix the first time, I had left Phoenix the first time. I came back to vote, because I lived there and I was registered to vote there. So I drove back to vote. And so recreational marijuana did not pass by a very small margin. And I knew in the next general election that it was, which then meant that I would be able to grow. So before I even left, somewhere in about November 2018, I went and actually, with the same person that screwed me over, but I went with her. And we met with the largest marijuana distributor in California. And he was a self-made billionaire. And guess what he was doing? He's looking for land in Arizona to grow. Now, fast forward. So I started looking on some of these websites that are my favorite, like landanchor.com, landsofamerica.com, because you can filter it into what you want it to be. Ooh, sorry. And so, I'm sorry, the little gnats are doing the most. It's time to go in. Story time is about to be over. And so, let's fix this, because I kicked it. And so, I didn't see anything. Then I went on Facebook. I was like, I don't see anything. I kept seeing stuff in like Florida and Alabama, and none of that was resonating with me. And so, surprisingly, the voice inside said, go to OfferUp. Literally, I did a search on OfferUp. The second parcel of land that came up, I bought. It was perfect. It was everything I was looking for. And I bought it. And so that was in May of 2020. And I just got out here 6 weeks ago. So almost a year, but there were some other things that happened in between it that God needed me to do some other stuff. But I bought it literally was far less painful to buy this land than it was to get my cell phone. Like, I had my cell phone, my number, ported over from T-Mobile, and it took all day. It was worse than buying a car. I'm telling you, I saw the land. I asked the pertinent questions because I learned the questions to ask when I lived in Colorado with the hateful person. He trained me well. I will give him that. He taught me well. And that's why I know that even though someone is, maybe some people just don't know what love is. And sometimes you just got to be able to love them through. But he taught me in abundance. So I knew all the pertinent questions to ask. And I asked all the questions he asked them. I did my due diligence. I researched it, to find out if it was legit. And it was. And I bought it. I literally went on a ride, maybe 2 hours, and I was thinking about it. As soon as I got back, I bought the land. I mean, it was like just that quick. Super easy. Oh, and they don't tell you. Lots of parcels of land that's inexpensive. Yeah, will you be in rural areas? Yes. Will you be in the middle of nowhere? Sometimes, yes. I'm okay with that, especially if you're doing van life, to me. Like, if you're doing van life, like, I'm 9 miles from town, and then I'm an hour away from a major city. I'm 2 hours away from another major city. I'm 3 hours away from another major city. I'm 4 hours away from another major city. Do you know what I'm saying? So, like, I think if you're doing van life, for me, living rurally doesn't mean it's not that big a deal to me. But there's no, you don't even need credit. You don't need credit to buy it. You don't. A lot of times the land is owner financed. You could buy it right out, or you could finance it for nothing. I mean, so many more of us should have land. And I'm just, since I've been out here, my grandmother's just been all over. Like, she's been all over, but she's been all over because what I'm doing is what she was raised doing. I took it back to basics. My grandmother was raised in rural Florida on land and going outside, catching chickens and killing them, processing them, slaughtering them to eat. I don't want to do that. I do remember telling her as a little girl, I would not do it. I do want chickens. I am going to get chickens only for eggs, though. I do not want to slaughter my chickens. I will have goats for goat's milk because I make goat's milk soap. But definitely don't want to slaughter anything. But I will say this, that guy, when I lived on his land, he was very serious, and I see the point. He said it's important that people who hunt their own food, they would have a different respect and appreciation for it, and I believe him. I agree. I just can't do it. I'm unnamed, but I can. So this is going to be part 1 of how I wound up having a desire for land. Now, back up a little bit, though. My brother said something to me. He's like, look at you living your dreams. I've said since I was a little girl, like, I was going to live off the land. I didn't know how, but I was like, I'm going to live off the land. And so sometimes when we manifest things, it doesn't come immediately. Obviously, it doesn't come immediately. It took 45 years or 40 years for it to maturate or come to fruition. But I've been saying it for a while that I was going to live off the land. So I manifested this life, and I also feel far more connected to my grandmother and my great-grandmother because my great-grandmother taught her, and I was pretty close to my great-grandmother. So I will say I manifested it. This is part 1. That was how the desire of land ownership even became about. Again, going to a place that was completely foreign to me with people that didn't know me from a can of paint that taught me. And I had the opportunity to live that experience, and I didn't know how I was going to get the land. I didn't know when, where, how, none of it, but I knew that's what I wanted. And I knew even when I returned to Phoenix the second time for the business deal, and I was like looking for apartments, none of it like even felt right. I never looked for an apartment in Chicago because I knew I wasn't staying. The only thing that made sense to me about Chicago was that I returned to Chicago to spend some quality time with my grandmother before she passed. My grandmother passed during the pandemic. She passed September 17th, 2020. I did not go to the funeral for several reasons, which is a whole nother story time. But she's my favorite person in the world. So, yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to honor her because I love her. I loved and love her dearly. I still do. But that's the first part of how I even wound up being interested in land, how I got to the land. Well, how I wound up buying the land. I will tell you how I got to the land. And the second part, please subscribe to my channel. Please turn on the notifications so you won't miss a thing. I am so grateful that you all are interested in my journey. I just, again, am doing the best that I can, little by little. It's been a process. Oh my God, the stories of how I even got to where I am right now. Like, it has been a journey just getting right here. Okay. So I just want to say thank you again so much for watching. And until next time, peace. I had tea this morning, not my normal coffee, sometimes referenced as a love that has never let me down.